They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But mine was served in a courtroom with evidence so devastating my ex-husband's lawyer literally walked out mid-trial. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the day my entire world shattered when I discovered my husband's obsession would destroy us all. Picture this, a beautiful Sunday morning in our affluent Atlanta suburb. I'm making pancakes while my husband David reads the Wall Street Journal on his iPad. Our three daughters sit at the table. Madison, our 10-year-old overachiever, is already doing homework. Lily, 7, is coloring. Emma, our 5-year-old, is playing with her food. Daddy, my science fair is Thursday, Madison says, her face lighting up. I built a model of the solar system with real LED lights for the sun and everything. David doesn't even look up. That's nice, princess. Madison's smile fades. You'll come watch my presentation, right? I'm competing for first place. We'll see, sweetheart. Daddy's got a lot of meetings this week. Lily holds up a crayon drawing. Daddy, look, I drew you. He glances at it for maybe half a second. Very nice, Lily. His eyes are already back on his iPad. Emma jumps up from her seat. Daddy, watch me do a cartwheel. Emma, sit down. We're eating. Daddy's reading. I shoot him a look across the kitchen. Girls are trying to connect with you, honey. His response is cold. I'm right here, aren't I? I'm present. Being in the room isn't the same as being present. Sarah, not now. The girls go quiet, sensing the tension. They always do. Looking back now, I realize I'd been making excuses for him for years. I told myself it was just work stress, that once his big project finished, he'd be the dad they deserved. I was so naive. Later that day, I find him in his home office. The girls really wanted your attention this morning. Madison worked so hard on that project. Sarah, I can't make every single school event. I'm building a business here. You made time for golf yesterday, 4 hours. He's defensive immediately. That was business, client development. And Madison's science fair isn't important? David closes his laptop and turns to face me. You want to know what's important? Legacy. Building something that lasts. My father built this business from nothing, and he left it to me with one condition. I sigh. I've heard this speech before. To have a son, I know, David, you mention it constantly. Because it matters, his voice rises. 3 years he's been gone. 3 years and I still don't have a son to carry on the Mitchell name. You have 3 beautiful daughters who carry your name. He laughs, bitter and harsh, until they get married and take someone else's. You don't understand what it's like to be the last male in your line, to know everything your grandfather built, everything your father built, dies with you. Our daughters are your legacy. Daughters who I love, sure, but a son? His eyes get distant. A son is different. A son carries the torch, takes over the business, makes his father proud in a way. He trails off, but the implication hangs in the air like poison. In a way daughters can't. I finish for him, hurt bleeding through my voice. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. I leave before he can see me cry. That conversation happened 6 months before everything fell apart. Looking back, all the signs were there. I just didn't want to see them. What I didn't know was that David was having another conversation entirely. Downtown in his high-rise corner office with glass walls overlooking the city, he's having lunch with Amber Novak, his 29-year-old project manager. Got your favorite from Marcel's, Amber says, closing the door behind her. Figured you could use comfort food after the meeting with the investors. You're a lifesaver. They were brutal today. Amber sits across from him, professional but friendly. You handled it well. Most men would have cracked under that pressure. Yeah, well, Mitchell men don't crack. We endure. That's what my father used to say. You mention your father a lot. You two were close? David's expression softens. He was my hero. Everything I am, I owe to him. He died 3 years ago, left me everything. His business, his legacy, his expectations. Expectations? David hesitates, then opens up. His will had a condition, a stupid, old-fashioned condition that's been haunting me. If I don't have a son by the time I turn 40, the inheritance goes to charity. $5 million. You have 3 beautiful daughters, Amber says carefully. I know, and I love them. But a son is different. The Mitchell name dies with me unless I have a boy. My father's legacy, my grandfather's legacy, 4 generations of work, all gone because I can't. He trails off, vulnerable in a way he never is with me. Amber leans forward, empathetic. Can't what? Because my wife can only give me daughters. She plants the seed carefully. That's not... David, you know scientifically it's random chance, right? Each pregnancy is 50-50. 3 times, 3 tries, 3 girls. Those aren't good odds. Or you've just been unlucky. She pauses, measuring her words. Maybe with someone else. David looks at her sharply. What are you saying? She backs off slightly. Nothing, just that genetics are complicated. Maybe it's not about you. Maybe it's about compatibility. David processes this false science, wanting desperately to believe it. You think it's her? I'm just saying, some couples produce certain combinations. It's biology. The seed is planted. David looks thoughtful, hopeful even. I didn't know about that conversation until much later. But that was the moment. The moment David started believing he needed someone else to give him what he wanted. And Amber, she knew exactly what she was doing. That evening, David enters our bedroom where I'm folding laundry. He's unusually nervous. Sarah, can we talk? Of course, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I've just been thinking about us, our family. I feel hopeful for the first time in weeks. Okay. I want to try for another baby. I'm genuinely surprised and happy. Really? You said after Emma we were done. You said 3 was enough. I changed my mind. I want one more try. My smile starts to fade as I hear something in his tone. One more try at what, David? You know what I mean. Say it. His jaw sets. A boy, Sarah. I want to try for a boy. My heart sinks. What if it's another girl? It won't be. But what if it is? What if God gives us another daughter? Will you love her? Will you be present for her the way you're not present for Madison, Lily, and Emma? I'm present for them, he says defensively. You missed Madison's piano recital last month. You haven't looked at Lily's art portfolio she spent weeks preparing. You can't remember Emma's preschool teacher's name? That's not fair. What's not fair is asking me to have another baby just so you can try for a specific gender like we're selecting options on a car. David stands, his voice cold. My father's will requires a male heir. I'm running out of time. Your father is dead, David, and he's controlling your life from beyond the grave. Don't talk about my father like that. Then don't talk about our daughters like they're disappointments. There's a long, tense beat. Will you try for another baby or not? He asks, measured, controlled anger in every word. Tears start in my eyes. And if it's a girl, then we'll deal with it. How? How will we deal with another daughter you resent? I don't resent them, I just don't value them as much as the son you don't have. David's face hardens. Sarah, this is my family's legacy. Don't you understand what that means? I understand perfectly. I understand he's willing to break his daughter's hearts for an inheritance. But I look at my husband, and part of me knows this is wrong. I've been conditioned to accommodate him, though, to keep the peace, to hope things will get better. Okay, I say defeated. One more try. He kisses my forehead, relieved. Thank you. You won't regret this. But I regretted it almost immediately, because I just agreed to bring a child into a home where love was conditional, where worth was determined by chromosomes. 6 weeks later, I'm staring at a pregnancy test in our bathroom. 2 lines. I'm pregnant. My emotions are complicated. Joy, fear, dread, all mixed together. Mixed. I look at myself into the mirror, questioning everything. That night at dinner, I make the announcement. Everyone, I have some news. We're going to have a baby. I'm pregnant. The girls explode with excitement. Madison cheers. Lily asks if we can name it Rainbow. Emma announces she's going to be a big sister again. David's first words are immediate and telling. When can we find out what we're having? David, I just told you. I know. Congratulations. But when's the anatomy scan? When can we know for sure? Madison picks up on the tension immediately. Dad, aren't you happy? He forces a smile. Of course I'm happy, Princess. This is wonderful news. The 20-week anatomy scan will tell us the gender, I say. So about 3 to 4 months from now. 4 months. Okay, that's not too long. Lily says brightly, what if it's a girl? We could all share a room. David's smile is tight. It's not going to be a girl, sweetie. But what if it is a girl? Emma asks. David stands abruptly. It won't be. I have work to do. Excuse me. He leaves the table. The girls look confused. I fight back tears. Madison asks quietly, her voice small. Mom, does Dad not want the baby if it's a girl? I lie to protect them. Of course he does, honey. He's just stressed about work. But Madison doesn't believe me. And I know she doesn't. That night marked the beginning of the end. I just didn't know it yet. The next 3 months were a slow-motion car crash. I watched my marriage disintegrate while my belly grew, carrying a secret that could either save us or destroy us completely. David became obsessed. I'd wake in the middle of the night to find him gone, his office light glowing. One night I checked his computer history, search after search. How to guarantee baby boy. Gender selection methods. Chinese gender calendar accuracy. Can diet influence baby gender? It was pathological. Meanwhile, he was disappearing from our daughter's lives. Madison's science fair came and went. I filmed her presentation, watching her scan the crowd for her father. His seat remained empty. When she won third place, she looked for him to share the victory. He wasn't there. At Lily's art show, other fathers took photos of their children's paintings. Lily showed me hers. It was our family, but Daddy was drawn in the corner, turned away from everyone else. The symbolism was crushing. Emma's dance recital was the worst. Little girls in tutus performed on stage. Emma waved excitedly at the seat where Daddy should be. Empty. I took the video, smiling for Emma's sake, crying behind my phone. Where's Daddy? Emma asked afterward, her little face confused. He had an important meeting, baby, I lied. More important than me? I had no answer for that. At 16 weeks pregnant, I found text messages on David's iPad that he'd left at home. Messages between him and someone saved as AN. My hands shook as I read them. Can't stop thinking about lunch. You make me feel understood. You get me in a way she never has. I wish we didn't have to hide. Soon. Things are going to change soon. I should have confronted him right then, but I was 16 weeks pregnant with no income, 3 children depending on me, and terrified. Terrified he'd fight me for custody and win because he had all the money and power. So I waited. I told myself I'd confront him after the 20-week scan. Maybe if it was a boy, things would get better. Narrator voice. Things would not get better. The girl started asking questions I couldn't answer. Why doesn't Daddy love us anymore? Madison asked one night as I tucked her in. He does, honey. He's just busy with work. He's never been this busy, she said, too perceptive for 10 years old. Lily stopped talking much. She expressed herself through drawings instead. Pictures of our family where Daddy was a dark scribble. Pictures where Daddy was missing entirely. Emma asked at bedtime, Mommy, is Daddy going to love the new baby more than us? No, baby. Daddy loves you all the same. Then why does he want a boy so bad? I had no answer. How do you explain to a 5-year-old that her father has been conditioned by generations of patriarchal thinking to value sons over daughters? How do you tell her that her worth in his eyes is diminished by her gender? My pregnancy progressed alone. At my 8-week ultrasound, the technician asked if I wanted to hear the heartbeat. I cried happy tears in that dark room, with no one to share the moment. At 12 weeks, the waiting room was full of couples. I was the only one alone. By 16 weeks, my belly was showing. I stood sideways in the bathroom mirror one morning studying my reflection. David walked past, didn't even notice. The emotional affair with Amber intensified. His phone lit up constantly with calls from AN. He smiled at those messages in ways he never smiled at home anymore. Coffee meetings ran long, lunches became dinners. He came home later and later, his clothes smelling of expensive perfume that wasn't mine. I found a hotel receipt in his suit pocket. He'd told me he was working late. The receipt was for a suite at the Harbor Inn. A credit card statement showed an $8,500 purchase at Cartier. I never received any jewelry. I was building a case without realizing it. Photographing evidence, saving receipts, recording dates and times. Some survival instinct was preparing me for war. Then came the 20-week anatomy scan. For once, David showed up. He'd been distant for months, but this appointment mattered to him. We sat in the darkened ultrasound room, and I tried to feel hopeful. Dr. Porter moved the wand over my belly. Everything looks great so far. Strong heartbeat, all measurements right on track. I looked at the screen, emotional. I can see the face. Look at those little lips. David cut right to it. Can you tell the gender yet? Dr. Porter adjusted the angle. Yes, baby's cooperating today. Would you both like to know? David, maybe we should wait, I started to say. His voice was firm. We want to know. Right, Sarah? I felt defeated already. Yes, we want to know. Dr. Porter's voice was professional and neutral. All right. Well, congratulations. You're having a healthy baby boy. Time stopped. I felt tears immediately. A boy, really? We're having a son. David's voice flooded with emotion for the first time in months. I'm having a son. He actually started crying. He grabbed my hand and kissed it, something he hadn't done in years. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. You did it. His phrasing made me uncomfortable, but I was relieved to see him emotional. We did it together. He stared at the screen, transformed. That's my boy. That's my legacy. Mitchell men are back. Dr. Porter looked slightly uncomfortable with his intensity. Well, he's measuring perfectly. Strong and healthy. Would you like photos? All of them. I want every single image. As we left, David was already on the phone with his mother. Mom, it's a boy. I'm having a son. Yes, finally. Everything's going to be perfect now. I watched him, feeling relief and unease in equal measure. Something felt off, but I couldn't name it. For 48 hours, things were better. David came home early. He played with the girls. He made plans for the nursery. He was present in a way he hadn't been in months. I thought this was the turning point. I thought we'd finally be okay. I was so naive. What I didn't know was that David went to see his mother that night. Alone, he sat with her over brandy in her formal living room with his portraits of Mitchell men going back generations. A grandson, Margaret Mitchell said, overjoyed. Oh, David, I've been praying for this. Your father would be so proud. I know, Mom, it's everything we wanted. The Mitchell legacy continues. And Sarah finally came through after 3 tries. There was an edge to her voice. David was defensive. She did her best. 3 daughters before getting it right. But no matter. You have your son now. That's what matters. David went quiet, contemplative. Yeah, I have my son. Margaret noticed his tone. You should be celebrating. Why do you look troubled? I've been thinking a lot lately about what I want, who I want in my life. Margaret's voice sharpened. She knew her son. David, you're about to have a son. What are you saying? Just that Sarah and I have grown apart. She doesn't understand what this legacy means, what father expected from me. She treats the girls and the boy like they're the same. They are all your children. But they're not the same, Mom. You know that. You and Dad raised me to understand that sons carry the torch. Daughters are lovely, but they marry and take other names. My son will carry the Mitchell name. Build on what grandfather and Dad created. That's different. So what are you planning? David looked at his mother directly. There's someone at work, Amber. She understands these things. She gets what it means to build a legacy. Margaret was alarmed. David, your wife is pregnant with your child. With my son. And once he's born, once I have him, that's all that matters. Sarah's been a good mother to the girls, but I need a partner who understands that my son is different. Special. The heir. You're talking about divorce while she's carrying your baby. Once the baby is born, I'll file. I'll get primary custody of my son. I have the money, the resources. Sarah can keep the girls. They're attached to her anyway. Margaret should have stopped him. She didn't. Split them up. David, that's practical. The girls need their mother, but boys need their fathers. It's biology, Mom. You know I'm right. Margaret said nothing. Her silence was approval. I didn't know about that conversation for months, but that was when David made his decision. Not to fix our marriage, to end it, and to take my son from me. 2 weeks after the ultrasound, everything changed. I was going to bed when I passed David's office. The door was slightly open. I heard him on the phone, his voice low but intense. I know it's complicated, Amber, but I told you once the baby is born, everything changes. I froze in the hallway. No, she doesn't suspect anything. She thinks the baby fixed everything. Yes, I'll tell her after the birth. Once I have my son, I'll file for divorce. Because I need custody established quickly. He's my heir, my legacy. I can't risk her taking him. My hand went instinctively to my belly, protecting. You're different, Amber. You understand what it means to build something bigger than yourself. Sarah just wants a happy little family, but I need more than that. A pause while he listened. I love you too. Just give me time to handle this right. Once I have my son, we can start our life together. I backed away from the door, my hand over my mouth to silence my gasp. I retreated to the bedroom and sat on the bed, my mind racing. That moment changed everything. I realized the baby hadn't saved our marriage. David had already left us. He was just waiting for the right time to make it official. And worse, he was planning to take my baby. His son, his legacy. He didn't see a child. He saw property. The next night I confronted him. Who's Amber? David was reading on his tablet. He didn't even look up. My project manager. Why? I heard you on the phone last night. You told her you loved her. He finally looked at me. No shame, just cold assessment. You were eavesdropping? You're having an affair in our house while I'm pregnant with your child. Don't turn this around on me. He sighed and set down his tablet. It's not an affair, Sarah. It's a connection. Something you and I lost years ago. My voice shook. I'm carrying your baby. Your son. The son you desperately wanted. And I appreciate that. I truly do. But Sarah, we haven't been happy in years. You know that. So what are you saying? He stood, moving away from me. I want a divorce. The words hung in the air. I couldn't breathe. You're divorcing me while I'm 5 months pregnant with your son? He turned to face me. I'll support the baby financially. Full financial support. Medical care, everything he needs. But Sarah, I want primary custody. I stood, incredulous. What? You'll have the girls. You're wonderful with them. But boys need their fathers. He needs to grow up in the Mitchell family, learning the business, understanding legacy. You want to split up our children? Take the baby away from his sisters? It makes sense when you think about it rationally. The girls are already your whole world. You've always been closer to them. But my son needs your son? He's our son. And no, David, absolutely not. We are not splitting up this family. His voice hardened. Then I'll fight you in court. And Sarah, think carefully about this. You're a stay-at-home mom with no income for 8 years, no career to return to, no savings in your name. I have $3 million in assets, the best lawyers in Atlanta, and unlimited resources to drag you through court until you're bankrupt. I backed up. You're threatening me? He pulled an envelope from his desk drawer. He'd prepared this. Here's what's going to happen. You take the girls and move out. I'm giving you $50,000 to get settled. That's generous. You have the baby. I get primary custody of my son. You get visitation. You're insane. Or option 2, we do this through the courts. I file for full custody of all the children based on your inability to provide financially. I drag this out for 2, maybe 3 years. By the time we're done, you'll have spent every penny on lawyers, and I'll still win, because I always win, Sarah. Tears started. What about Madison, Lily, and Emma? They're your daughters, and they're fine. They have you, they love you. But my son, he came toward me, reaching for my belly. I flinched back. He's mine. He's the Mitchell heir. He's different. They're all your children. Girls grow up and marry other men. They take other names. They don't carry on the family legacy. That's just biology, Sarah. Facts. I put my hand protectively over my belly. You're a monster. His voice was cold, detached. I'm a father who knows what he wants. You have 48 hours to pack and leave. Take the girls. I'll wire the $50,000 to your account. This house is in my name, inheritance from my father. You have no legal claim to it. This is my house too. I've lived here for 11 years. Read the deed, Sarah. It's titled solely in my name. Inherited property, not marital. The law is on my side, 48 hours. If you're not gone, I'll have you removed. Removed by who? The police. I'll file a report that you're trespassing on my property, that you're unstable and I'm concerned for my safety. I was horrified. You'd lie to the police about me? I'll do whatever it takes to protect my son. 48 hours, Sarah. He walked out. I collapsed on the couch, sobbing silently so the girls wouldn't hear. I didn't sleep that night or the next. I kept thinking this was a nightmare I'd wake up from. But morning came, and another morning, and David's deadline was approaching. I had to make a choice: fight and risk losing everything including my baby, or go along with his plan and hope I could find another way. The next morning, while David was in the shower, I searched his office. I found divorce papers already drafted, dated 3 weeks ago, before we even knew the baby's gender. A lease agreement for a luxury apartment signed by David Mitchell and Amber Novak. Move-in date, next month. And an email from Amber. Just got confirmation from Dr. Bradley. I'm 8 weeks pregnant. We're really doing this, building our family from scratch. I can't wait to give you what you truly deserve. My hands shook as I read it. David had planned to leave before knowing the baby's gender. Amber was pregnant too. He wasn't leaving for the baby. He was leaving for Amber. But he still wanted my baby because it was his legitimate Mitchell heir. He wanted 2 sons, one with each woman. The cruelty was staggering. I photographed everything with my phone, sent copies to my email, hid the originals back where I found them. In that moment, I realized I wasn't fighting a husband who had fallen out of love. I was fighting a narcissist who saw his children as chess pieces. And my baby? He was the king David planned to capture. 36 hours after David's ultimatum, I still hadn't left. I'd called my friend Becca, an attorney from college. She told me to stay put, that legally he couldn't just throw me out. I stayed. The girls were at school. David came home from work and saw my car still in the driveway. I told you to be gone. I stood firm. This is my home, our home. I'm not leaving. He pulled out his phone. Fine. You want to do this the hard way? What are you doing? Making sure you understand I'm serious. I watched in horror as he made the call. Yes, officer, I need police assistance at my home, 2847 Rosewood Estate Drive. My wife is refusing to leave my property after I've asked her repeatedly. Yes, I'm concerned about escalation. She's been emotionally unstable. Thank you. We'll wait. You called the police on me? You refused to leave peacefully. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I'm 5 months pregnant and you called the police to remove me from my home? My home, and yes. 20 minutes later, 2 officers arrived. Officer Martinez, a woman in her 40s, looked sympathetic but bound by law. Officer Brooks was older, by the book. Ma'am, your husband says you're refusing to leave the property? I'm his wife. I've lived here for 11 years. I'm 5 months pregnant with his child. David was calm, rational, showing them documents. Officers, here's the property deed. It's solely in my name, inherited from my father before our marriage. She's not on the deed. We're separating and I've asked her to leave. She's refusing. Officer Brooks addressed me. Ma'am, if your name's not on the deed and he's the sole property owner, legally this is a civil matter. You'll need to work it out through divorce court. But my children live here. My daughters will be home from school in 40 minutes. David spoke calmly. The girls can stay here with me tonight. Tomorrow, once Sarah's settled somewhere, she can collect them. I turned to the officers desperately. He's planning to take my baby when he's born. He's trying to separate me from all my children. Officer Martinez was sympathetic. Ma'am, that's a custody issue for family court. Right now, we need to resolve the immediate issue. You need to leave the property. Please, I have nowhere to go. My mother lives in a 1-bedroom apartment. I'm pregnant. My daughter's... Officer Brooks cut me off. Ma'am, we can give you 30 minutes to pack essentials. After that, we'll have to escort you out. I looked at David. This was really happening. He was really doing this. Officer Martinez stayed with me as I packed, Clothes, toiletries, important documents, photos. 30 minutes for 11 years of life. My hands shook the entire time. At 3:30, the school bus dropped off the girls. They ran up the driveway excited, then stopped when they saw the suitcases and police car. "Mom, what's going on?" Madison asked, her face falling. I knelt down, holding back tears. "Girls, come here. Mommy needs to tell you something." They huddled around me. David stood in the doorway, arms crossed. The officers tried to give us space. "Mommy is going to stay somewhere else for a little while." Lily's voice filled with panic. "Why, what happened?" Emma started crying. "Mommy, don't leave." Madison looked between her father and me, pieces clicking. "Daddy's making you leave, isn't he? Mommy and Daddy are going to live separately for a while, but I'll see you very soon, I promise." David spoke then, cold and matter of fact. "Girls, your mother and I are getting divorced. You'll live here with me. You'll visit her on weekends." Emma wailed, "I don't want Mommy to go." I held all three, tears flowing. "Listen to me. This is not goodbye forever. This is just goodbye for tonight. I'll talk to you every single day. I'll fight to come back for you. Do you understand? I'm going to fight." Madison hugged me tight. "Dad, please, please don't make her leave." "Madison, this is between adults. Let go of your mother. She needs to go." Lily wrapped her arms around my leg and wouldn't let go. Emma was sobbing. Madison was trying to be brave, but tears streamed down her face. I had to physically untangle myself from my daughter's grip. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. "I love you. Remember that. No matter what anyone tells you, I love you more than anything." I picked up my suitcases and walked to my car. I looked back one last time. Madison was holding Lily and Emma, all three crying. David's hand was on Madison's shoulder, possessive. The door to my home closed. I drove to my mother's apartment, barely able to see through my tears. My mother, Patty, opened the door and saw my face. "Oh, sweetheart, come here." I collapsed into her arms. Her apartment was small. One bedroom, tiny living room, smaller kitchen. This would be my home now. "You can stay as long as you need," Mom said. "We'll figure this out." "Mom, he's going to take my baby. He wants custody when the baby's born. Over my dead body. We'll get you a lawyer. We'll fight him." "With what money? I have nothing. He controls everything." "You have me. You have your girls who need you, and you have that baby who's going to be born into a family that loves him, not a father who sees him as property." My phone rang. Madison, calling from David's phone. "Madison, baby, are you okay?" She was whispering. "Mom, Dad took our phones. I snuck his phone to call you. He said you didn't want to live with us anymore, that you chose to leave." Fury and heartbreak mixed. "That is not true. Daddy made me leave. I wanted to stay." David's voice in the background. "Madison, who are you talking to?" "I love you, Mom. We all—" The call ended. He'd taken the phone back. I stared at my phone. Mom watched my heart break. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling of my childhood bedroom, 5 months pregnant, separated from my daughters, knowing I was in the fight of my life. And I was unarmed. The next 6 weeks were systematic destruction. Within a week, David filed for emergency custody. His lawyer claimed I'd abandoned the family home and the children. I checked my debit card, declined. All joint accounts frozen. David had withdrawn $87,000 and moved it to accounts in only his name. My credit cards were canceled. I had $347 in my personal checking account. That was everything. The first custody hearing was brutal. David's attorney, Pierce Morrison, was a shark in an expensive suit. "Your Honor, Mrs. Mitchell abandoned her 3 daughters in the family home. She has no income, no residence of her own, and no means to provide for the children." My attorney, Becca, fought back. "She was forced out by Mr. Mitchell. Yet she left willingly. No one physically removed her. She chose to go." It was technically true, devastatingly true. David testified, lying smoothly. I asked Sarah if we could separate amicably for the children's sake. She agreed. She said she needed space. I offered her $50,000 to get settled, and she left. When I testified, I was emotional, desperate. He gave me 48 hours to leave, or he'd call the police. I had no choice. Morrison presented the police report. It was worded vaguely enough that it could be read either way. The judge, an older traditional man, ruled, given that Mrs. Mitchell voluntarily left the family home and currently has no stable residence or income, I'm granting temporary custody to Mr. Mitchell. Ms. Mitchell will have supervised visitation twice weekly, 2 hours per visit. Your Honor, please, I started. This is temporary pending full custody hearing in 8 weeks. Court adjourned. I walked out in shock. This couldn't be happening. The supervised visits were torture. David's mother, Margaret, was the supervisor. She was hostile and cold. The girls were confused and withdrawn. Daddy said you didn't want to live with us anymore, Madison told me at the first visit. That's not true, baby. Margaret cut in. Girls, don't upset your mother. She's very emotional right now. Lily wouldn't even look at me. She drew in the corner silently. Emma clung to me, crying, Please take me home with you. I can't, baby. Not yet. But soon, I promise. After 2 hours, time's up. The girls cried as I left. The second visit was worse. Madison had become withdrawn. Lily showed me a drawing of our family with me crossed out. Because you're not there anymore, she said quietly. Emma had regressed, sucking her thumb, something she hadn't done in years. I was being erased from my daughter's lives. Meanwhile, I was applying for jobs at 5.5 months pregnant. We'll call you. They didn't. This is a very physical position. When are you due? So you'd need maternity leave soon. Your work history gap is concerning. 8 years, 47 applications sent, 3 responses, 0 job offers. My pregnancy progressed alone. At the 24-week checkup, I sat in a waiting room full of couples. I was the only one alone. Dr. Porter asked how I was doing. Fine, I lied. Sarah, I can see you're under stress. That's not good for baby. I started crying right there in the exam room. She held my hand. I'm documenting all of this. The stress, the situation, it might help in court. I tried setting up a nursery in Mom's apartment, a used crib from Facebook Marketplace, baby clothes from Goodwill, a tiny corner of the living room, so different from the beautiful nurseries I'd had for my daughters. Then, in week 7, a glimmer of hope. Becca called. Sarah, I have potentially good news. David's company is being audited. Financial irregularities. What does that mean? It means if he's been embezzling or committing fraud, it damages his stable provider argument. I'm hiring a private investigator. Frank Russo, former cop, the best. He'll dig into David's finances and his relationship with Amber. I can't afford a private investigator. I'm covering it for now. We'll get it back from David later. For the first time in weeks, I had hope. Maybe we could prove David was unfit. Maybe I could get my girls back before the baby came. Maybe everything would be okay. Narrator. Everything would not be okay. At 26 weeks pregnant, I sat in Becca's downtown office while Frank Russo, the private investigator, spread photos across the conference table. Mrs. Mitchell, I've been watching your husband for 3 weeks. He's not as careful as he thinks. Frank was 51, gruff but warm, a father of 3 daughters himself. He showed me evidence methodically. Marcel's restaurant, Tuesday night, $400 meal charged to his business account as client dinner. No client present, just him and Amber Novak. More photos. 4 different hotels in 3 weeks, always weekday afternoons. Business account again, labeled as meeting rooms. These aren't meeting rooms. These are suites. A receipt. Cartier, $8,500. Diamond bracelet. Purchased 2 weeks after he kicked you out. See who's wearing it here? He showed me a photo of Amber with the bracelet. The audit found $127,000 in questionable expenses over 18 months, most connected to Amber Novak. Becca leaned forward. That's embezzlement. That's fraud. Gets better, Frank said. I talked to some people at Mitchell Development. Off the record, they say David's business partner is furious, might file criminal charges. If David gets charged with fraud, do I get custody? I asked. Absolutely. A parent facing felony charges can't claim to be the stable provider. Frank pulled out another folder. About Amber Novak's pregnancy. My heart skipped. What about it? She's not pregnant. I stared at him. What? She told David she was 12 weeks along, right? I've been tracking her. No OB appointments, no pregnancy cravings, no morning sickness. She's not showing. And look at these gym records. High-intensity spin classes. No pregnant woman does that. So she lied to him? About being pregnant? Or about how far along she is? Or about losing the baby? Some kind of lie. Women who con men use fake pregnancies all the time. I felt a strange mix of vindication and pity. Becca outlined our strategy. We present all this at the full custody hearing. David's company is under audit. He's embezzling funds. His stable life is built on fraud. His new girlfriend is lying about being pregnant. Meanwhile, you've been working hard to rebuild. How's the job search? Not great, but I have an interview next week. Bookkeeping position. Remote work. Perfect. Sarah, we're going to win this. I really think we are. Frank nodded. Mrs. Mitchell, I've worked a lot of cases. Usually there's ambiguity. Not here. Your husband is dirty. We can prove it. That night, I allowed myself to hope. I talked to my 27-week belly. We might be okay, little guy. Mommy might get your sisters back. We might be a real family again. The baby kicked strongly. I smiled. Mom brought me tea. You look different, lighter. I feel like maybe this nightmare is ending. Frank found so much evidence. David's been embezzling. Amber's probably not even pregnant. The judge will have to see he's unfit. My phone rang, the remote bookkeeping job. Mrs. Mitchell? This is Janet from Consolidated Bookkeeping. We'd like to offer you the position. $42,000 a year, fully remote. When can you start? Tears of joy. Really? Oh my God. Thank you. I can start immediately. I hung up crying. I got it, Mom. I got the job. I have income now. The judge will see I can provide. Mom hugged me. That night, I went to sleep hopeful. I had evidence. I had a job. I had a plan. The custody hearing was in 3 weeks. 3 weeks and I'd get my daughters back. Or so I thought. 5 days before the custody hearing, my phone rang. Unknown number. Mrs. Mitchell, this is Detective Karen Williams with Atlanta PD. We need you to come to the station. My blood ran cold. The police station? Why? What's this about? We've received some concerning reports. It would be better to discuss in person. Can you come down this afternoon? Am I being charged with something? Just come in, please. 2 p.m. I called Becca immediately. She raced to meet me there. At the police station, Detective Williams showed me evidence that made my world tilt. Text messages from my number to David. Threatening messages. You'll regret taking my children from me. I'll make you suffer the way I'm suffering. You and that whore will pay for what you've done. Dozens of texts escalating over 2 weeks. Voicemails from my number. A woman's voice that sounded like me, but wasn't. I know where you live, David. I know where she lives. You can't hide from me forever. Photos submitted by David. My car parked outside his house at 2 a.m. Me in a hoodie watching from across the street. My car following Amber's car. I didn't do any of this. I was panicking. I don't even have a car right now. My car broke down 2 weeks ago and I can't afford to fix it. Can you prove that? Detective Williams asked. Yes, I have the mechanic's estimate. $1,800 in repairs. It's been sitting in his lot. Becca arrived. Stop talking, Sarah. I'm Rebecca Walsh, Mrs. Mitchell's attorney. This interview is over unless you're charging my client. We're not charging her yet, but Mr. Mitchell filed for a restraining order. There's a hearing this afternoon. This afternoon, Sheila? That's less than 4 hours' notice. Emergency order. Judge granted it given the alleged threats. The restraining order hearing was a nightmare. David's lawyer presented the fabricated evidence. Text messages, voicemails, photos, timeline of escalating harassment. David testified, acting terrified. After I was granted temporary custody, she started texting, calling at all hours, showing up at the house, following Amber. I'm scared for my daughters. What if she becomes violent? Becca cross-examined. Mr. Mitchell, you claim these texts came from my client's phone number. Have you verified that? They came from her number. Are you aware that phone numbers can be spoofed? That apps exist to fake caller ID? I suppose, but why would And these photos of Mrs. Mitchell's car, can you identify the license plate in any of them? The photos are from a distance, but it looks like her car. So you can't definitively identify it as her vehicle? Becca presented the mechanic's statement. My car had been inoperable for 2 weeks, but the judge wasn't swayed. The evidence presented is concerning. While I can't definitively prove these threats came from Mrs. Mitchell, I also can't definitively prove they didn't. Given that children are involved and there's a history of conflict, I'm granting a temporary restraining order. Mrs. Mitchell must stay 500 feet from Mr. Mitchell, his residence, and Miss Novak. I stood up. But my daughters live with him. How am I supposed to see my daughters? Your visitation is suspended pending psychiatric evaluation. Psychiatric evaluation? I'm not crazy. You're 7 months pregnant, going through a contentious divorce, and there are allegations of threatening behavior. The court requires a psychiatric evaluation to ensure you're fit to be around the children. Once that's complete and you're cleared, supervised visitation can resume. Until then, no contact with Mr. Mitchell or the children except through your attorney. The gavel came down. I couldn't breathe. Outside the courthouse, I had a full panic attack. Paramedics came. My blood pressure was 180 over 110. Hypertensive crisis. They rushed me to the hospital. Dr. Porter was grave. Sarah, your blood pressure is critically high. We're giving you medications to bring it down, but if they don't work, we may need to deliver the baby early. Early? I'm only 28 weeks. Almost 29, but yes, it's early. However, if we can't control your blood pressure, continuing the pregnancy could cause seizures, stroke, or death for you and baby. My hand went to my belly, terrified. Please don't take my baby. Please. He's all I have left. We're going to try to stabilize you. But Sarah, you need to reduce stress. Becca explained what happened. She lost visitation with her 3 daughters. Her husband fabricated evidence to get a restraining order against her. Dr. Porter looked horrified. I'm admitting you overnight for observation, maybe longer. That night in the dark hospital room, monitors beeping, I felt the baby kicking frantically. Babies sense their mother's stress. I whispered to my belly, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry you're going through this. Your daddy wants you so badly, but he doesn't even know you exist yet. And when he finds out, he's going to try to take you too. I made a decision in that hospital bed. No, he can't have you. I won't let him. I don't know how yet, but I'm going to protect you, even if it means he never knows you exist. I spent 3 nights in that hospital. My blood pressure stabilized enough to go home, but I was on bed rest for the rest of the pregnancy. But something had changed in me during those 3 nights. The fear transformed into something harder, into rage, into determination. David had taken my daughters. He'd tried to destroy my reputation. He'd pushed me into medical crisis, but he didn't know about my baby, and I was going to keep it that way. The next 6 weeks were an avalanche of catastrophes. The psychiatric evaluation felt like a trap. 3 hours of invasive questions with Dr. James Murray. On a scale of 1 to 10, and how often do you think about hurting your husband? I don't want to hurt him. I want my children back. That's not what I asked. Every answer could be twisted. Madison called from a friend's phone. Teyestein, Mom, I'm not supposed to call, but I saw you on the news. You look so sad. Madison, baby, how are you? How are your sisters? We're not okay, Mom. Lily still won't talk. She just draws pictures of you all day. And Emma got expelled from her preschool for hitting a teacher. My heart broke. Oh no, baby, I'm so sorry. It's not your fault. It's Dad's. Mom, I know what he did. I heard him on the phone with his lawyer. He made up those text messages. He hired someone to take pictures and pretend it was you. Madison, are you sure? I heard him. He said, make sure there's no way to trace it back to me. Mom, he's lying about everything. David's voice in background. Madison, who are you talking to? The call ended abruptly. My new job laid me off. Company downsizing. I was 30 weeks pregnant, on bed rest, couldn't look for new work. Unemployment benefits were $275 a week. Mom's rent was $850 a month. Mom had a minor stroke. 5 days hospitalized. She recovered but couldn't work anymore. Becca called. Sarah, David filed for full permanent custody. The hearing is in 2 weeks. He's using your incomplete evaluation as the evidence you're uncooperative. And he's added new claims that you violated the restraining order. I didn't. I know, but he has evidence again. Photos, witnesses. He's systematically building a case. Madison's school counselor called, breaking protocol. Mrs. Mitchell, your daughters are struggling. Madison's grades have dropped. Lily hasn't spoken in weeks. Complete selective mutism. And Emma's been having violent outbursts, hurting other children. The landlord served Mom with an eviction notice. 2 months behind on rent. 30 days to vacate. Becca was honest. Sarah, this custody case is going to cost $50,000 to $75,000 to fight properly. I've been working pro bono, but I can't cover all of it. We're outgunned. David has unlimited resources. At 34 weeks pregnant, I started having contractions, false labor, but my cervix was thinning. Dr. Porter was concerned. You need to stay off your feet completely. No stress. Baby's measuring small. The stress is affecting him. How am I supposed to not stress? I'm losing everything. I know, but if you don't calm down, this baby could come at 34 weeks. That means NICU, breathing problems, potential disabilities. Then came the final blow. I saw on social media, Amber had posted it publicly, a photo of her with a massive diamond ring. Caption, he asked, I said yes, starting our forever. The photo included David, Amber, and my daughters in the background. Madison looked miserable. Lily was turned away from the camera. Emma was crying, but they were there at Daddy's engagement party to the woman he cheated with. I stared at the photo. Everything hit at once. Lost my home, lost my daughters, lost visitation rights, lost my income. About to lose Mom's apartment. My daughters at their father's engagement party. Mom recovering from a stroke. Baby could come prematurely, facing legal battles I couldn't afford. This was absolute rock bottom. That night, I sat in the dark, staring at that engagement photo. I wasn't crying anymore. I was past crying. I was numb. I opened my phone's voice memo app and started recording. It's November 2nd, 11:17 p.m. I'm 35 weeks pregnant. I haven't seen my daughters in 47 days. Tomorrow we're getting evicted because I can't pay rent. My mom had a stroke taking care of me because I can't work. My daughters were at their father's engagement party today. To the woman he cheated on me with. My voice cracked. David is going to get full custody of all 4 children. I know it. He has money, lawyers, a stable home. I have nothing. I'm homeless, broke, and everyone thinks I'm crazy. I put my hand on my belly. I'm supposed to give birth in 5 weeks, and when I do, David is going to take this baby. He's going to take my son the same way he took my daughters, and there's nothing I can do to stop him. I started crying. I don't know how to survive this. I don't know how to lose 4 children and keep breathing. Then after a long silence, my voice changed, got harder. But he doesn't know. He doesn't know about this baby yet. He thinks I'm still pregnant. And when I give birth, what if I don't tell him? What if this baby just disappears from his radar? I stopped myself. No, that's kidnapping. That's illegal. He'd find me and I'd lose everything forever. Another pause. But I can't let him have this baby. I can't watch him value my son while he destroys my daughters. I can't. I stopped recording, sat in the dark. That recording stayed on my phone. I didn't know it then, but it would become evidence later. Not against me, for me. Proof of what David had driven me to. The next morning, I went to a free legal clinic, desperate for help. A woman sat next to me in the waiting room, tired, worn, in her 40s. First time here? I nodded. They probably can't help me anyway. Let me guess. Custody battle. Ex has all the money and power. How did you know? Because I was you 5 years ago. Husband took my kids, made me look crazy, got a restraining order so I couldn't see them. Hope flickered. Did you get them back? Long pause. No, I'm still fighting. My youngest just turned 10, doesn't even remember me anymore. The hope died. Want some advice? Give up. Walk away. Don't let him destroy you completely. You're pregnant. Save that baby. But the others? Sometimes you can't win against someone with the unlimited money and no conscience. That's your advice? Give up on my children? I'm saying no when you're beaten. He's going to take them anyway. Save yourself. She left. I sat there processing this devastating advice. Then another voice, a woman on my other side, 30s, professional looking. Don't listen to her. I turned. What? That woman? She gave up. She let her ex win. Don't be her. Easy for you to say. You don't know my situation. I was you 3 years ago. Abusive ex, custody battle. I had nothing. I lived in my car for 4 months while pregnant, but I fought, and I won. How? I documented everything, every lie he told, every manipulation. I got lawyers to work pro bono. I went to the media. I made noise. And eventually the truth came out. My ex has covered his tracks. He's fabricating evidence. So fabricate better truth. I don't mean lie. I mean be smarter than him. Find his weaknesses. Everyone has them. She handed me a business card. This is the organization that helped me. They might be able to help you. It read, Mothers Against Parental Alienation, Free Legal Advocacy. Why are you here if you won? I volunteer now to help women like you, like I was. She left. I held the card, and for the first time in months, I felt something other than despair. I felt possibility. The next day, I walked into a small office with a sign that read, Mothers Against Parental Alienation. A black woman in her mid-40s greeted me with warm eyes that had clearly seen their share of pain. Sarah Mitchell? Come on in, honey. You look exhausted. I'm 35 weeks pregnant, haven't slept in days, and I'm being evicted tomorrow. So yeah, exhausted covers it. I'm Keisha Washington. Sit. Tell me everything. I told her. All of it. David's obsession, the affair, being kicked out, the fabricated evidence, losing visitation, the medical crisis. I didn't leave anything out. Keisha listened without interrupting, taking notes. Finally, she spoke. Your husband is a narcissist with resources. That's a dangerous combination. But I've seen worse, and I've seen those women win. How? Everyone has more money and power than me. Money isn't everything in family court. The truth is, and he's been sloppy, men like him always get sloppy because they think they're untouchable. She pulled out a laptop. Your friend Rebecca sent me all your case files. I've been reviewing. David made mistakes, big ones. She showed me evidence I didn't even know existed. These texts he claims you sent, they came from a spoofing app. We can prove it. There's metadata, digital footprints. These photos of your car stalking him, different car model. Your car is a 2015 Honda Civic. This is a 2018. We had a digital forensics expert analyze it. David's been embezzling from his company. The audit found $127,000. But we found more. There's offshore accounts. Another $200,000 he's hiding. Your PI was right. Amber was never pregnant. We got her gym records, her medical records, even her social media from before she claimed to be pregnant. She was drinking alcohol, going skiing. No pregnant woman does that. How did you get all of this? We have volunteers, lawyers who work pro bono, tech experts who help abused mothers, private investigators who donate time. Sarah, you're not alone anymore. I started crying from relief. I can't afford. Everything we do is free. Our mission is to stop parental alienation and protect children. Your daughters are being alienated from you. That's what we fight. What do I do? First, we're getting you housing. We have a shelter specifically for mothers in custody battles. You and your mom can stay there. It's clean, safe, private rooms. And then we go to war, legal war, and we don't lose. The transitional housing was nothing like a homeless shelter. Clean apartments, 2 bedrooms, kitchen, living room. Mom and I moved in that day. That first night, I met other women in the communal kitchen. Jennifer, 32, her ex tried to claim she was unfit because of postpartum depression. Rosa, 40, her ex falsely accused her of child abuse. Michelle, 28, Her ex was a police officer who used his connections against her. How far along are you? Jennifer asked. 35 weeks, having a boy. Does your ex know? No, and I'm not telling him. Smart. Mine tried to claim custody before my son was even born. Had papers filed when I was in labor. How did you stop him? Keisha and the team here, they got his records showing domestic violence history. Judge gave me full custody. You won? All three women nodded. Yes. They showed me photos with their kids. Custody documents, final judgments in their favor. It took 2 years, but I got my babies back, Jennifer said. It's possible, Sarah, when you have the right team. That night, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope and community. I wasn't alone. The next day, we had a strategy session. Becca was there along with Keisha, Frank the PI, and a new face. Marcus Williams, 55, a civil rights attorney, legendary in family court. Mrs. Mitchell, I've reviewed your case. Your ex-husband has committed multiple felonies. But more importantly to us, he's engaging in textbook parental alienation. He showed a presentation. Parental alienation tactics David had used, telling children their mother chose to leave, restricting contact, making mother the villain, forcing children to participate in events that hurt mother, like the engagement party, lying about mother's whereabouts, interfering with mother-child bond. The problem is judges often don't understand parental alienation until it's too late, so we have to make it crystal clear. How? Becca asked. We bring in expert witnesses, child psychologists who will testify about the harm David's causing. We show the judge the girl's deterioration, Madison's grades, Lily's mutism, Emma's violence. Frank spoke up. I can get school records, medical records, therapy notes. Good. We also need to destroy his credibility, show he's a liar. The fake harassment evidence is our smoking gun. Keisha looked at me. And we need Sarah to tell her story, all of it, raw and honest. To who? The media, local news. This is the kind of story that gets attention. Pregnant wife kicked out, husband wants to take her baby. I don't know if I can. Becca squeezed my hand. Sarah, public pressure matters. When people see what David's doing, it puts pressure on the judge, on his lawyers, on him. Marcus asked seriously, when are you due? 4 weeks. The custody hearing is in 12 days. Odds are you'll still be pregnant. That's good. The judge will see you, visibly pregnant, talking about how he's trying to take all your children. It's powerful. Keisha added, but if you go into labor before the hearing, we need a plan. Do not tell David when you give birth. I wasn't planning to. Good, because the moment he knows that baby is born, he'll file emergency custody motions. We need to control the timing. 4 days later, at 37 weeks, I woke at 3 a.m. to contractions. Strong, regular. Mom, I think this is it. We arrived at the hospital. Dr. Porter was called in. You're 5 centimeters dilated. Baby's coming tonight. It's too early. I'm only 37 weeks. 37 weeks is term. Baby will be fine. How are you feeling? I'm alone. David's not here. My daughters don't even know I'm in labor. Mom squeezed my hand. You're not alone. I'm here. The labor was intense. By 6 a.m., I was 8 centimeters. No time for epidural. Mom held my hand. I cried, I want my daughters. They should be here. The nurse asked, do you want us to call your husband? No, don't call him. At 8:43 a.m., after one final push, my baby was born. Crying, healthy, 6 pounds, 4 ounces. Dr. Porter smiled. It's a boy, Sarah, you did it. I held my son, sobbing. Hi, baby. Hi. I'm your mama. I'm sorry your daddy isn't here. I'm sorry for everything. But I promise you'll be loved. So loved. He had David's nose, David's chin. He looked exactly like his father. The irony was crushing and beautiful at the same time of mine. Later that day, the nurse came with paperwork. Okay, Mom, I need information for the birth certificate. Baby's name? Jacob Thomas Mitchell. Beautiful. And father's name? I paused. Unknown. I'm sorry? Father unknown, leave it blank. The nurse looked uncomfortable. Ma'am, if you're married, we typically list your husband. We're separated. He has no legal claim to this baby. Father unknown. If he's the biological father, he could petition. Let him try. Right now, this baby is mine. Only mine. Mom watched as the nurse left. You know he'll find out eventually. Not if we're careful. The custody hearing is in 10 days. If we can get through that without him knowing about Jacob. What's your plan, Sarah? I don't know yet, but he's not taking this baby. I'll die before I let that happen. 2 days later, Keisha picked us up from the hospital in an unmarked car. How are you feeling? Sore, exhausted, terrified. We've arranged for you to stay at a different shelter. Off the books. David can't know where you are. What about the custody hearing? You'll be there. Babies can't come into courtrooms, so we've arranged childcare at the shelter. David will never see him. The next week was a blur, caring for newborn Jacob while recovering from birth. Sleep-deprived, physically healing, but mentally sharp. Focused, ready to fight. Marcus drilled me on testimony. Frank presented his final findings. Digital forensics on the fake text. Financial forensics on David's offshore accounts. Medical records proving Amber was never pregnant. Security footage from David's office building showing him and Amber together. Emails between David and his lawyer discussing fabricating the evidence. Dr. Stevens, the child psychologist, reviewed Madison, Lily, and Emma's therapy notes. These children show classic signs of parental alienation. Forced to choose between parents, coached to reject mother, psychological manipulation. We gathered school records. Madison's grades had dropped from straight A's to D's and F's. Lily's records noted, student has stopped speaking, selective mutism diagnosed. Emma's records detailed multiple violent incidents. 3 days before the hearing, I did a local news interview. I told my story on camera, showed photos of my daughters, talked about being kicked out while pregnant. The story ran and went viral locally. Pregnant mother fights for custody after husband's betrayal. Hundreds of comments supporting me. Women sharing their own stories. David's business partners saw the story. His reputation took hits. The night before the hearing, my phone rang. Unknown number. Mom? Madison's voice, whispering it. Madison, baby, how did you get this number? I'm at my friend Taylor's house. I told Dad I'm doing homework. Mom, I saw you on the news. You looked so sad. I miss you so much. How are you? How are your sisters? We're not okay, Mom. Lily still won't talk. She just draws pictures of you all day. And Emma got expelled from her preschool for hitting a teacher. Oh no, baby, I'm so sorry. It's not your fault. It's Dad's. Mom, I know what he did. I heard him on the phone with his lawyer. He made up those text messages. He hired someone to take the pictures and pretend it was you. Madison, are you sure? I heard him. He said, make sure there's no way to trace it back to me. Mom, he's lying about everything. Would you be willing to tell the judge that? I don't know. He'll be so mad. He already gets mad when we talk about you. He says you abandoned us. Baby, I didn't abandon you. I would never. I know, Mom. I'm 10. Not stupid. I know Dad kicked you out. I was there, Mom. When can we come home? I want to come home. Tomorrow there's a hearing, and I'm fighting for you, all of you. All of us. But there's only me, Lily, and Emma. I paused. She didn't know about Jacob. I know, sweetheart. I just meant all 3 of you. I have to go. Taylor's mom is coming. I love you, Mom. I love you too. So much. Be brave tomorrow, okay? Okay. The call ended. I sat there holding baby Jacob. Tomorrow was the day. Tomorrow I'd fight for all my children. And I wouldn't lose. The courthouse was packed. News cameras lined the steps outside. I walked in with Marcus Williams and Becca flanking me. I was 9 days postpartum, still carrying baby weight, wearing a simple dress that concealed the fact I'd just given birth. David arrived with his lawyer, Morrison, looking confident. Expensive suit, fresh haircut, the image of stability. He saw me and smirked. He thought he'd won. He had no idea what was coming. Judge Carol Henderson presided, 56 years old, mother of 4, 18 years on the bench. She had kind eyes but a stern demeanor. This is the final custody hearing for Mitchell versus Mitchell. I've reviewed all filings. Mr. Morrison, you may present your case. Morrison stood. Thank you, Your Honor. This is straightforward. Mr. David Mitchell is a successful businessman, stable provider, living in the family home with 3 minor children who are thriving in his care. Mrs. Sarah Mitchell abandoned the family, has no stable income or housing, and engaged in threatening, harassing behavior that resulted in a restraining order. Mr. Mitchell seeks full legal and physical custody of all 3 daughters. Marcus stood. Your Honor, may I respond? You'll have your turn, Mr. Williams. Mr. Morrison, call your first witness. David took the stand. Morrison asked him to describe the marriage breakdown. David lied smoothly, painting me as unstable, paranoid, obsessed. He claimed I'd become unhinged, that he'd asked me to leave peacefully for everyone's mental health. Tell the court about the harassment. Threatening texts at all hours, voicemails saying she'd ruin me. She stalked my home, followed my car. I was terrified. I have 3 daughters to protect. I had no choice but to get a restraining order. And how are your daughters doing in your care? They're adjusting. It's been hard, but children are resilient. They have stability, structure, a loving home. I'm engaged to a wonderful woman who cares for them deeply. Then it was Marcus's turn. Mr. Mitchell, you testified you loved your wife. When did that love end? Gradually over the past year. Not suddenly, not when you met Amber Novak? I don't see what... Marcus pulled out an exhibit. This is your company credit card statement. Over 18 months, you spent $47,000 on dinners, hotels, and gifts with Amber Novak, your employee. This started 18 months ago, not 1 year. You were having an affair long before your wife became unstable, weren't you? Those were business expenses. Business expenses. Your Honor, I have security footage from the Harbor Inn. It shows Mr. Mitchell and Ms. Novak in a hotel room engaging in decidedly non-business activities. Morrison objected, but the judge overruled. The character and honesty of the parent is relevant. Marcus continued systematically. Mr. Mitchell, you claim you asked your wife to leave peacefully. Is it true you gave her 48 hours to vacate or you'd call the police? I asked her to leave for everyone's safety. 48 hours, yes or no? Yes. And when she didn't leave, you called the police to have her forcibly removed while she was 5 months pregnant? She was being difficult. The text messages you claim she sent, did you verify they actually came from her phone? They came from her number. Marcus handed documents to the judge. Your Honor, I'd like to present forensic analysis of the text messages. The metadata shows they originated from a spoofing application, not from Mrs. Mitchell's actual device. The gallery murmured. Mr. Mitchell, did you fabricate those text messages? No, I don't know anything about spoofing. Really? Because we have a recording. Morrison objected, but the judge allowed it. The audio played in the silent courtroom. David's voice, clear as day. Make sure the texts look real. Use her number. Make them threatening enough to get a restraining order, but not so crazy they don't believe it. A lawyer's voice. David, this is borderline illegal. David again. I don't care. I need her away from the kids. Once I have full custody, it doesn't matter. The silence was deafening. David's face went pale. That's out of context. What context makes it acceptable to fabricate evidence, Mr. Mitchell? No answer. Marcus pressed on. You claim your daughters are thriving. Are you aware Madison's grades have dropped from A's to D's? That's temporary adjustment. Are you aware Lily has developed selective mutism? She hasn't spoken in 8 weeks. She's shamai. Emma was expelled from preschool for violent behavior. Are these signs of children thriving? Kids act out during divorce. Or kids act out when they're being alienated from their mother. Mr. Mitchell, isn't it true you told your daughters their mother abandoned them? She did abandon. She left because you forced her out. But you told the girls she chose to leave. You've prevented them from calling her. You've told them she's sick, unstable, dangerous. Textbook parental alienation. Marcus's voice grew harder. And you did it all while having an affair embezzling from your company, and planning to take your wife's newborn baby. What newborn? David caught himself. Marcus realized his slip. Your unborn baby, the one she was pregnant with. David was suspicious now. She's still pregnant. Where is she? Your Honor, I'm done with this witness. Morrison tried to call Madison as a witness, but she was at school. Marcus revealed we had her available by video call. The judge allowed it. 10 minutes later, Madison appeared on a large screen in the school counselor's office. She was nervous but clear-eyed. Marcus was gentle. Madison, I know this is scary, but I need to ask you some questions. Is that okay? Okay. Do you love your mom? Yes, so much. Do you want to live with her? Tears started. Yes, and I want Lily and Emma to live with her too. Why don't you live with her now? Because Dad made her leave. He said she had to go or he'd call the police. I heard him. David stood. Madison, that's not... Judge Henderson's voice was steel. Mr. Mitchell, sit down or I'll have you removed. Marcus continued. Madison, did your dad tell you anything about why your mom left? He said she abandoned us, that she didn't want to be our mom anymore. But that's not true. I know it's not true because I heard him on the phone planning it. Planning what? Making up the text messages. He told someone to send text from Mom's number so he could get a restraining order. He said once Mom couldn't see us, he'd get full custody and Mom couldn't fight him. The courtroom erupted. The judge banged her gavel. Morrison tried to object. Your Honor, the child is confused. Madison's voice rose, crying now. I'm not confused. I heard him. He said Mom was in his way and he needed to get rid of her. I was crying in my seat. My brave daughter. Madison, how are your sisters doing? Not good. Lily won't talk. She cries at night. Emma got kicked out of school. We all just want Mom back. Thank you, Madison. You're very brave. After Madison's testimony, Dr. Stevens took the stand. He testified about the girl's severe trauma, parental alienation, anxiety disorder, depression, selective mutism, violent outbursts, all classic trauma responses to being separated from their mother. What do these children need? They need to be reunited with their mother immediately. The longer they're alienated from her, the more permanent the damage. Then I took the stand. Marcus asked me to tell the court what happened. I did, all of it. How David told me I had 48 hours to leave. How he was 5 months pregnant with the son David desperately wanted. How he wanted to split up our children. How he called the police. How my daughters cried as I was forced to leave. Why did he want custody of the unborn baby? Because it's a boy. David is obsessed with having a son. He has 3 daughters, but all he wanted was a boy. His father's will required him to have a male heir to inherit $5 million. That's all he cares about, the money and the legacy. Did you send those threatening text messages? No, I never sent any threats. I never stalked him. I was trying to survive and get my daughters back. What's your current situation? I'm living in transitional housing. I have a support system. I'm working with therapists. I have a remote job lined up. I'm ready to be a full-time mother again. What do you want from this court? I started crying. I want my daughters back. I want them to know I never abandoned them. I want them to heal. And I want to protect my... I stopped myself. Protect your what? I looked at the judge. May I approach the bench, Your Honor? At sidebar, I told him, Your Honor, I gave birth 9 days ago to a boy. David doesn't know. I haven't told him because I'm terrified he'll try to take my baby the way he took my daughters. The judge looked shocked. Morrison sputtered about rights. Mr. Morrison, your client fabricated evidence and committed perjury in my court. I'm not inclined to protect his rights right now. She turned to me. Where's the baby now? Safe, at the shelter with caregivers. Was the father listed on the birth certificate? No, I listed him as unknown. Mrs. Mitchell, while I understand your fear, legally the father has a right to know. Please, Your Honor, once he knows about Jacob, he'll fight for custody just to get his inheritance. He doesn't want a son because he loves his children. He wants an heir. He'll damage Jacob the same way he's damaged my daughters. The judge thought for a long moment. Step back. I need to consider this. We returned to our positions. David was suspicious, whispering urgently to his lawyer. Frank Russo testified last about the embezzlement, the offshore accounts, the affair, the hired help to create fake evidence, the systematic alienation. What about Amber Novak's pregnancy? She was never pregnant. It was a lie to manipulate Mr. Mitchell into leaving his wife. David stood shouting, "That's a lie. She was pregnant. She lost the baby." "Mr. Mitchell, sit down." The judge was furious. Frank showed medical records. Ms. Novak had no prenatal care, no pregnancy tests, no OB appointments. She fabricated the pregnancy. David looked devastated, realizing Amber had played him. Finally, the judge spoke. "I've heard enough. I'm ready to rule." The courtroom went silent. Judge Henderson looked at David with barely concealed disgust. "In 18 years on this bench, I've seen many ugly custody cases, but this? Mr. Mitchell, you have systematically lied to this court, fabricated evidence, committed perjury, embezzled from your company, alienated your children from their mother, and treated your daughters as if they were worthless simply because of their gender." David tried to speak. She cut him off. "You kicked your pregnant wife out of her home. You tried to manipulate the legal system to take her newborn baby. Yes, Mr. Mitchell, I know about the baby. You wanted custody not because you love that child, but because you need a male heir for your inheritance. You are the very definition of an unfit parent." Her ruling was swift and absolute. "I am awarding full physical and legal custody of Madison, Lily, and Emma Mitchell to their mother, Sarah Mitchell, effective immediately. You, Mr. Mitchell, are granted supervised visitation only, 2 hours per month, supervised by a court-appointed guardian, contingent on you completing a parenting course in psychological evaluation. You are ordered to pay child support in the amount of $7,500 per month for the 3 girls. You will also pay Mrs. Mitchell's legal fees in full, $143,000. Furthermore, Mrs. Mitchell is awarded the family home. You have 30 days to vacate." David protested. "Your Honor, that's my father's. Your father's house became marital property when your wife lived there for 11 years. She gets it. As for the 4th child, Jacob Mitchell, Mrs. Mitchell has sole custody as she's listed as the only parent on the birth certificate. Mr. Mitchell, if you wish to establish paternity, you may petition the court. However, given your behavior in this case, I will be highly skeptical of granting you any rights to that child." David stood furious. "I have a son?" "Sit down, Mr. Mitchell. You kept my son from me? That's kidnapping. Mr. Mitchell, one more outburst and you'll be in contempt. You have no legal right to that child at this time. Mrs. Mitchell was under no obligation to inform you of the birth." Morrison tried one last time. "Your Honor, we'll be filing for paternity testing and custody. You're welcome to file whatever you want, but let me be clear. Any man who treats his daughters as less than because of their gender will not get favorable treatment in my courtroom regarding his son. If Mr. Mitchell wants a relationship with that baby, he'll have to prove he's not going to damage him the way he's damaged his daughters." The gavel came down. "The girls will be released to their mother today. Mr. Mitchell, you have 1 hour to pack their belongings. This court is adjourned." I couldn't breathe. I'd won. After everything, I'd actually won. Outside the courthouse, media swarmed. I walked down the steps with my legal team when David pushed through the crowd, desperate. Sarah, wait." I stopped. Becca and Marcus flanked me protectively. David approached, devastated. "You had him. You had my son. This whole time you were pregnant with my son, and you didn't tell me?" My voice was calm, cold. "That's right. When? When did you have him?" 9 days ago, while I was living in a shelter because you kicked me out. I want to see him. I want to meet my son." "No. He's my son, my heir, the Mitchell legacy. He's not your heir. He's not your legacy. He's a human being, a baby boy who will grow up loved and valued, not as property." "Sarah, please. I'll take a DNA test. I'll prove he's mine." "Go ahead, prove it. You're still not getting him." "The court will give me rights." "Maybe, maybe not. You heard the judge. She's not inclined to give you access to a son when you've spent 10 years destroying your daughters. David was desperate now, broken. I didn't mean I love the girls. You just wanted a boy more. You just valued a son over your daughters. You just destroyed your family chasing an inheritance. I can change. I can be better. You should have been better 10 years ago. For Madison, for Lily, for Emma. They needed a father who loved them unconditionally. Instead, they got you. David's voice broke. When did you find out? That it was a boy? The 20-week ultrasound. The same day you were so happy, remember? You cried. You said, I'm having a son. You were so focused on winning you didn't realize you already had. So for 5 months, you knew I had the son I wanted and you didn't tell me? Because you were going to take him from me. You said you wanted primary custody. You wanted to split up our children, boys with you, girls with me. You were going to destroy our family even worse than you already had. I was wrong. I see that now. Sarah, please let me meet him. Let me hold my son. You had 3 chances to be a good father. 3 daughters who worshipped you. Madison learned to ride a bike for you. Lily's first word was Dada. Emma's favorite game was when you threw her in the air. They loved you so much, and you threw them away like they were defective products. David was crying now. I know I messed up. Jacob will never know that feeling. He'll never wonder if Daddy loves him less because he's not the right gender. He'll never cry himself to sleep asking what he did wrong, because you'll never get the chance to hurt him. That's my son. My son. I have a right. You gave up that right when you kicked me out while pregnant, when you fabricated evidence against me, when you tried to steal my daughters. You made your choices, David. Now live with them. I started to walk away. David called after me. I'll fight you. I'll get a lawyer. I'll prove he's mine, and I'll get custody. I turned back one last time. Go ahead and try. You'll spend your father's inheritance on lawyers. You'll drag this through court for years, and you'll lose. Because every judge will see what Judge Henderson saw. You're a man who only values children if they fit your blueprint. And Jacob, he deserves better than that. I left him standing there, cameras flashing, everything he wanted just out of reach. His phone rang. I heard his business partner's voice. David, we need to talk. The audit revealed we're filing criminal charges. I'm sorry, but you're being arrested for embezzlement. David's world was completely destroyed. That afternoon, I went to collect my daughters. David's mother, Margaret, met me at the house, cold and silent. She led me to the girls' rooms. Madison saw me first. Mom? She ran into my arms, started crying, couldn't stop. You came back. You came back for us. I promised, didn't I? I always keep my promises. Lily appeared in the doorway. She didn't speak, but she ran to me and buried her face in my shoulder. Emma toddled over. Mommy, Daddy said you didn't want us anymore, but I knew he was lying. I never stopped wanting you, not for 1 second. As we loaded the car, Madison turned to David, who'd appeared in the driveway. You told me Mom was the bad guy. You made me lie to the judge. You made me say she was mean to us. Madison, I'm sorry. I don't forgive you. Maybe someday, but not now. She got in the car. David stood there, alone in the driveway of his empty house. We drove away, my girls, my family, together again. That evening, I introduced them to their baby brother. Girls, there's someone I want you to meet. This is Jacob, your brother. Madison's eyes went wide. A baby? A real baby? When did you have him? Lily asked, speaking for the first time in weeks. While we were apart, I kept him secret to protect him. Emma gently touched Jacob's hand. He's so tiny. Will Daddy want us back now that he knows it's a boy? Madison asked, always perceptive. No, baby. Daddy chose to walk away from all of you. But that's okay, because we have each other. All 5 of us. Madison looked at her baby brother, then at me. He's lucky. He'll never know what it's like to not be good enough for Daddy. I pulled her close. None of you were ever not good enough. Your father was the one who wasn't good enough. For any of you. That night, for the first time in months, We were all under one roof, not David's roof, our roof, my daughters, my son, my family. Complete. 2 years passed like a dream I was afraid to wake from. David served 18 months in federal prison for embezzlement. When he was released, he moved to a different state. His business was gone, his reputation destroyed. The $5 million inheritance? The court ruled he'd forfeited it by not having custody of a male heir. By age 40, he wrote sometimes. Letters asking to see the kids, asking to meet Jacob. I never opened them. I just filed them away in case I needed them for court later. The girls didn't want to see him. I never forced them. Madison, now 12, was thriving. Her grades were back to straight A's. She wanted to be a family law attorney. To help other kids like us, she said. Lily, now 9, talked constantly. She was taking art classes and had already sold 2 paintings at a local gallery. She still drew pictures of our family, but now they were bright and colorful. Everyone was smiling. Emma, now 7, was the happiest child I'd ever known. Her teacher called her pure sunshine. The violence was gone, replaced with empathy and kindness. And Jacob, my beautiful boy, was 2 years old. He looked exactly like his father. Same nose, same chin, same dark eyes, but he had my spirit. He was gentle and curious and so loved. Emmy, he called one morning, toddling after his youngest sister. Jacob, come see what I built. He ran to her, giggling. We'd moved back into the house. I'd had it completely redecorated, every trace of David erased, replaced with warmth and light. The master bedroom became a library. The room where I'd discovered his affair became Lily's art studio. New memories to overwrite the old. I'd started working as a paralegal at Mothers Against Parental Alienation. Keisha was my mentor. We helped dozens of women fight back against men like David. Every case we won felt like another piece of healing. One Saturday morning, the girls were helping me make breakfast when Madison asked, Mom, do you ever regret marrying Dad? It was a heavy question for a 12-year-old to ask. I thought carefully. I regret how things ended. I regret the pain you girls went through, but I don't regret the marriage entirely because that marriage gave me you 3. And honestly, going through all of that made me stronger, made us stronger. Do you think Jacob will want to meet Dad someday? Lily asked. Maybe. When he's older, I'll tell him the truth, all of it, and I'll let him decide. Emma looked up from the pancakes. What will you tell him? That his father made mistakes, that he valued the wrong things, but that Jacob is surrounded by people who love him for exactly who he is. Jacob toddled over, sticky syrup hands reaching up. Mama, up! I lifted him. He was getting heavier every day, growing so fast. Jacob, you're getting to be such a big boy. Big boy, he repeated proudly. Madison watched us, smiling. He's lucky he has us. We're all lucky we have each other, I corrected. That afternoon, I got a notification on my phone. A news article. Former real estate developer David Mitchell dies at 58 from heart attack. I stared at it for a long moment. I felt nothing, not satisfaction, not sadness, just nothing. I didn't tell the girls right away. That night, after Jacob was asleep and the older girls were doing homework, I called them to the living room. Girls, I need to tell you something. Your father passed away. It was a heart attack, very sudden. Silence. Finally, Madison spoke. Do we have to go to the funeral? No, baby, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. Good, I don't want to go. Lily and Emma nodded in agreement. Do you want to talk about how you're feeling? I asked gently. Madison considered. I feel sad, but not the way you're supposed to feel sad when a parent dies. I feel sad that he never got to be the dad we needed, that he wasted his chance, that he died alone. That's a very mature way to look at it, sweetheart. Are you going to tell Jacob? Lily asked. When he's older, when he can understand. None of them went to the funeral. I didn't either. Later, I heard from Becca that only a handful of people attended. His mother, Margaret, a few distant relatives. His business partner paid for the burial out of guilt. David Mitchell died alone, just as he'd lived the last years of his life. Alone. A few months later, on Jacob's 3rd birthday, we had a party in the backyard. The girls had decorated with dinosaur-themed everything. Keisha was there. Becca and Marcus came. Frank Russo, the PI who'd helped save us, brought his 3 daughters. I watched Jacob blow out his candles, his sisters cheering him on. This little boy would grow up surrounded by strong women. He'd grow up knowing that his worth wasn't tied to his gender, that he was loved simply for being himself. That evening, after everyone had left and the kids were in bed, I sat in the library that used to be the master bedroom I'd shared with David. I pulled out the very first ultrasound photo from my pregnancy with Jacob. 20 weeks, the day we learned it was a boy, the day everything changed, and yet nothing changed at all. I remembered David's face that day, the joy, the relief, the obsession. He'd finally gotten what he wanted, and in getting it, he'd lost everything. I put the photo away and went to check on the kids. One by one, I tucked them in. Madison was reading a book about famous female lawyers. Mom, did you know Ruth Bader Ginsburg was the second woman ever on the Supreme Court? I did know that. She was pretty amazing, wasn't she? I want to be like her, help people who can't help themselves. You already are, sweetheart. You already are. Lily had drawn a new picture. It was our family at a park. 5 people. No David. Just us. Happy. It's beautiful, honey. We're complete now, Lily said simply. Emma was already asleep, her arms wrapped around a stuffed dinosaur that Jacob had given her, even though it was his toy. And Jacob, in his toddler bed, was sprawled out like a starfish. I adjusted his blanket and kissed his forehead. Good night, baby boy. You are so loved. As I left his room, I whispered to the empty hallway, to the ghost of the man who'd once lived here. You got exactly what you wanted. A son. You just lost everything else to get him. And in the end, you got nothing at all. I wasn't being cruel. It was simply the truth. David had spent his entire adult life chasing a legacy, obsessing over carrying on the family name, building an empire for a son he didn't have yet. And in the end, what was his legacy? 4 children who didn't attend his funeral, a fortune lost to legal fees and forfeited inheritance, a name that would be remembered, if at all, as a cautionary tale. My legacy was different. It was 4 thriving children who knew they were valued, who knew love wasn't conditional, who knew family wasn't about gender or money or living up to someone else's expectations. It was teaching Madison that being a woman didn't make her less capable. It was watching Lily find her voice again. It was seeing Emma's innocence restored. It was raising Jacob to be a man who valued people for who they were, not what they were. That was legacy, not money, not names, not inheritance, love, presence, value. I thought about the woman I'd been 2 years ago, pregnant, terrified, being forced from her home. I thought about the woman who'd given birth alone in a shelter, who'd hidden her son from his father out of fear. I'd been so broken. But broken things can be mended, and sometimes they come back stronger. I wasn't the same woman anymore. I was harder in some ways, softer in others. I was a mother who'd fought through hell for her children. I was a survivor who'd become a victor. And standing in my home, my children sleeping peacefully in their beds, I realized something. David had wanted to win so badly. He'd been willing to destroy everything to win. But in the end, I was the one standing. I was the one with my children. I was the one who'd built a real legacy. So who really won? The answer was obvious. 3 years later, Madison came home with a school assignment. Mom, I have to interview someone who overcame adversity. Can I interview you? I agreed. She set up her phone to record. What was the hardest moment? I thought carefully. The day I had to leave you girls, when Dad made me go and you 3 were crying. That moment broke something in me. But you fixed it. Not alone. I had help. Grammy, Becca, Keisha, the women at the shelter. Sometimes asking for help is the bravest thing you can do. Do you hate Dad? No, sweetheart. I pity him. He had everything that mattered and couldn't see it. He was so focused on what he didn't have that he destroyed what he did have. What would you tell other women going through this? That you're stronger than you think. Your children are watching how you handle adversity. Document everything. Ask for help. Believe in yourself. It's okay to be scared, but don't let fear make your decisions. Should Jacob know the truth about Dad? Yes, when he's old enough, I'll tell him everything. He deserves his own story. The next day, Margaret called. David's mother wanted to meet. She arrived looking frail, aged. I need to apologize for enabling David, for not stopping him, for losing my grandchildren. What do you want, Margaret? To meet Jacob, just once. Anger rose in my chest. You want to meet the grandson you helped David try to steal? I know I have no right. You're correct. Jacob is not a replacement for David. He's not your second chance. He deserves people who love him unconditionally. She nodded, crying. You're right. Maybe someday if the girls decide they want a relationship with you. But Jacob doesn't need to know you exist. He has a grandmother who loves him exactly as he is. That evening, Jacob asked, Mama, do I have a daddy? I knelt to his eye level, 5 years old enough for honesty. You do, baby, but he's not in your life because he made choices that hurt people. He wanted a son for the wrong reasons. Not to love you, but to make himself feel important. That's silly. Everyone's important. Out of the mouths of babes. You're absolutely right. I'm glad I have you, Mama. And Grammy and Madison and Lily and Emma. I'm glad I have you too, sweetheart. He ran off to play, already moving on. 5-year-olds are resilient. That night I wrote in my journal, Jacob asked about his father today. He accepted the truth and moved on, unburdened by the weight David carried his whole life. Jacob is free in a way David never was. That's the greatest gift I could give him. I checked on all 4 children sleeping peacefully. Madison with law books, Lily surrounded by artwork, Emma peaceful with stuffed animals. Jacob starfished across his bed. 4 children forged in fire, emerging stronger. David was right about one thing. Legacy matters. It just doesn't look like money or names. It looks like 4 sleeping children who know they're loved. 10 years later. Madison was 25, a lawyer specializing in family law. Lily was 22, a successful artist. Emma was 20, studying childhood psychology. Jacob was 15, smart and kind. One afternoon, Jacob came home with a genealogy project. Mom, I need information about both sides of my family. This was it, the conversation I'd prepared for. I told him everything. David's obsession, the affair, the divorce, being kicked out pregnant, the custody battle, hiding his existence, the trial, David's death. Jacob listened quietly. Finally. So he wanted a son so badly he destroyed his family? Yes. And never got to meet me because you were protecting me? Yes, I know you might be angry. Mom, I'm not angry. I'm grateful. You protected me from someone who would have valued me for the wrong reasons. That's not a sin of father. That's a burden. I started crying. I made so many mistakes. But you never gave up. You never let him win. I have 3 amazing sisters, a grandmother, and the strongest mom I know. I don't need the ghost of a man who couldn't see what mattered. Did he ever regret it? I think at the end he understood what he'd lost, but it was too late. Good, not because I want him to have suffered, but because it means he wasn't pure evil, just a broken person who made terrible choices. For his project, Jacob wrote about my side of the family. He got an A. That summer, Madison said, Mom, I'm representing a woman whose husband wants custody of their son because he has 3 daughters and is obsessed with a male heir. Sound familiar? Oh my God. I told her your story. She cried and said it gave her hope. That evening, all 5 of us had dinner. Looking around the table, I saw the legacy David had been desperate to create, not in one son, but in 4 extraordinary humans. Madison saving other mothers, Lily creating healing art, Emma helping traumatized children, Jacob growing up whole and valued. That was legacy. That night, I stood in the backyard looking at stars, thinking about David. Not with anger, just understanding. His story ended badly, as obsession stories do. But ours? Still being written. And beautiful. I thought about the terrified pregnant woman forced from her home years ago. I wanted to tell her, you'll make it. You'll hit rock bottom, but get back up. You'll find strength you didn't know you had. And one day you'll stand here with all 4 children, safe and whole, and realize you didn't just survive. You won. David wanted a son to carry his legacy. He got a son who carries mine. Every time Jacob chooses kindness over cruelty, values character over gender, chooses love over legacy. That's my legacy, not David's, mine. I went inside, checked on each child one last time. 4 beautiful children, one incredible family, built on love, not money or names. David got exactly what he wanted, a son. He just lost everything else to get him. That's not revenge, that's consequences. Some stories end in tragedy. This one ends in victory. The kind that matters, building something beautiful from ashes. David wanted to be remembered. He is, as a cautionary tale. And his son became everything David wasn't. Kind, accepting, whole. That's the final irony. David's obsession destroyed his family. And the son he never met became living proof that everything David believed was wrong. Gender doesn't determine worth. Money doesn't create legacy. Character matters more than names. Jacob learned those lessons from his father's absence, his father's mistakes. That's real legacy, the kind that lasts. It looks like Madison fighting for justice, Lily creating beauty, Emma healing children, Jacob growing up loved. David was right about one thing. Legacy matters. He just never knew what it looked like.